In this video, we're going to talk about one of the most critical steps for success in real estate, and that's screening your tenants so that you make sure you're landing the best quality tenant possible. So let's jump right in. When it comes to screening, diligence is key. And we'll mention again, the stigma in Section 8 is around the tenants being poor quality and trashing your property and just being a general pain. And this stigma is probably the number one reason why people don't get into it. Incidentally, it's something that's advantageous to people who are investing using this exit strategy because it means there's less competition. So while I always tell people that this belief is false, I actually don't mind too much that it exists because it makes my life easier at the end of the day. And really, the reason why this belief exists is because of the experiences that have been had by landlords who have not properly screened their tenants, which, if you do not do so, will lead to a ton of problems, Section 8 or otherwise. So I cannot emphasize enough the importance of diligence and discipline when it comes to proper screening. This is not a step you can compromise on. You must screen properly, must. If you think about your two biggest expenses in real estate, they're generally going to be maintenance/repairs as well as vacancy. And if you don't screen your tenants properly, you are virtually guaranteeing you have an increased costs in both areas. And those costs aren't just monetary. Not screening your tenants properly have costs well beyond the money in terms of psychological and emotional effects that can happen from having bad tenants. Time wasted, energy wasted, focus wasted can all be prevented the majority of time by doing proper screening up front. So stay diligent, stay disciplined, and don't overlook this step. So the first step when it comes to screening for high quality tenants, it's like we mentioned in the video on marketing your property, is to simply have a high quality property in a high quality area and use high quality marketing to list that property. That alone will screen out a population of the bad actors and attract more high quality tenant, which will make the screening process that much easier. The screening process occurs once you've marketed the property for rent. You or your property manager respond to inquiries based on the postings you published, then meet prospective tenants at the property where they do a walkthrough. And if they have interest, they'll fill out an application. This is typically something that's handled 100% by your property manager. And a big part of the reason why you use a property manager because it can be very time intensive. That application that a prospective tenant will fill out will include basic info, which will allow the property manager to run their credit, do a criminal background check, have an employment history that they can check, and give them the necessary information, include they have a clean record and a clean eviction history. All of those things mentioned must be checked. Those are the basic areas that apply anytime that most property managers will already be familiar with. Credit check, criminal history check, eviction history, clear record, employment status, all are non-negotiables. Additionally, it's important to check that the person is, number one, a voucher holder, and number two, has the appropriate voucher for the home that you're renting out. Seems sort of obvious, but if you do not check this, you will most certainly get voucher holders who don't have the appropriate room count or not the actual voucher holder. So ensure they have the voucher on them, ensure that it's checked visually to make sure they've got the appropriate room count and they can afford the home that you're renting out. And when it comes to the employment history with Section 8, a person may not be employed or their voucher may not require that they pay a significant amount of the rent each month. It's still important to verify these things, if for no other reason to ensure that they can cover the portion that they have that they're responsible for, irrespective of the size of it. This will also provide a framework on a broader aspect of screening, which is to check if the tenant is being honest. Even if you don't care too much about their employment history, it gives you a good test to see if the information they're including on the application is accurate, they're being truthful and forthcoming with the information you need, and if they're being proactive in explaining anything to you that may need to be explained. A major red flag is if someone is lying to you or intentionally omitting information on the application or in your interaction with them. That's important for you to know when screening them. If they're lying to you, then there's almost a guarantee they will be lying to you down the road, and it's a good indicator that that person will not be a high quality tenant. So use the employment check as the opportunity, if nothing else, to make sure that they're being truthful and forthcoming. The next thing to look at is the person's general appearance. This does not mean that you should be basing a decision to rent based on their level of attractiveness, ethnicity, or anything else of that nature, which is, aside from being illegal, incredibly unethical. What you do want to take note of, though, is how this person is presenting themselves. This is another somewhat obvious thing in a lot of ways, but it cannot be overlooked. If someone is disheveled, dirty, or otherwise abnormally unkempt, it's not necessarily a deal killer in all instances, but it can be a huge indicator of how they generally live their life. And if nothing else, could be a signal that you need to screen this person a little bit deeper. Other things that can really stand out appearance-wise are indicators of drug use. Burnt lips, track marks, things of that nature are big red flags and things you want to avoid like the plague. So take note of their general appearance and how they take care of themselves. For no other reason, it's going to be indicative of how they're going to take care of your property. The next aspect to ensuring that you're screening for high quality tenants the right way is to do a home check. Once you shorten the list of prospective tenants, have your property manager do a home visit and see their current situation. Generally speaking, if the tenant has nothing to hide, they'll welcome this and have no problem with the home visit. If an applicant opposes this, it could be a sign they're trying to hide something. If a property manager goes to their current home and they've seen that the place is trashed, they've seen that there's holes in the wall, that they otherwise have been irresponsible and are not taking care of the property, you can be sure the same thing will occur with your property. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the property can't be spotless. A lot of these applicants will have kids, and as someone who has kids myself, I know that a lot of times your house is just going to be kind of messy. And that's okay. You see kids' toys on the grounds, you see maybe clothes in a kid's room that aren't exactly in the hamper, that kind of thing. I tend to look past. I'm not really a stickler on that because I understand how it is. What I'm looking for more is if that kid has kicked a hole through the wall or the door, or if there's doors missing off the hinges, or other type of destructive aspects to what's going on there. There's massive messes on the carpet or something like that going on. You really want to be careful about renting to people like that. People who are a little untidy or have kids that are obviously causing messes that kids cause, not a huge deal. It's going to happen either way. People who have homes that are being destroyed from them living there, or hoarders, or other type of oddities like that are extreme, highly recommend avoiding for obvious reasons. Last but not least, a really great way to do a deep screening of someone is to check their social media profiles. You can tell a lot by someone's social media presence. Often, low quality tenants will have low quality aspects of their lives displayed for the world to see on the internet. So if you see someone's profile and they're either toting a gun or around people toting guns, or they're doing drugs or around people doing drugs, and they're stupid enough to display all this on the internet, you've got yourself someone who you should not be renting to. Conversely, if someone's social media shows them as a high quality person, it's a great way to spot check and screen them. It's obviously not indicative of the entire situation, but it's just another aspect to add to your repertoire to make sure you're screening the most diligent way possible. So the one thing that I will not include on my list that you'll often hear people recommend is to do a landlord check. And the reason why I don't recommend this is because it's more often than not, in my experience, a waste of time. If a landlord has a problem with the tenant and the tenant is looking for other places, and one of those places is your place, they apply, and then you call that landlord. If the landlord's crafty, they're not going to tell you that they're having a problem with the tenant. In fact, they're going to tell you a bunch of stuff to try to make you accept that tenant to get the problem out of their life. So because it's tough to take landlords at face value and believe everything they say, and conversely, if it's a good tenant, they may try to undercut them so that you don't accept them and they get to keep them around. So it's tough to know that the landlord's being honest with you. It's just part of the business. And in my experience, it's not worth your time. It's not going to give you a good indication, especially if you're doing a home visit, checking the social media, the other things they can tell you, whatever a landlord might tell you. You should have a good idea of that via your other mechanisms. All right, so land a high quality property in a high quality area that you market using high quality marketing. Perform the basic background checks, criminal, credit score, employment history, clean record, eviction record. Ensure that the tenant's being honest with you. Do a home visit, do a social media visit, spot check their appearance. If you do all of these things, you will be putting yourself in the best position possible to make sure that you have properly screened for high quality tenants. Remember, this area is one of the most important areas for long-term success. Cannot emphasize enough the importance of being diligent and being disciplined and not compromising when it comes to this step. Your future self will thank you later for it. And with that, I'll see you on the next one.